Baldwin. I am the Senior Director of Development here at the Coalition for the Homeless, or CFTH. Thank you all for joining us this evening. The Way Home is not only our region's incredible homeless response system, which is made up of more than 100 service providers and partners. It is also one of the nation's most effective homeless response systems, collaboratively housing more than 32,000 people since 2012. And our nonprofit, CFTH, has the pleasure of coordinating that work. One of our goals is to educate our community about homelessness, challenging current perceptions, changing hearts, and ultimately building partnerships to advance our system's work. That's why we launched CFTH Presents, our quarterly educational series last summer. Rooted in data, we see ourselves as the local nerds of homelessness, the folks working collaboratively to produce innovative solutions driven not by hearts and feelings, but by what data suggests will be most effective. So tonight, we will be discussing what's next for Houston's response to homelessness and how various systems will work together to make a larger impact. But before I get started, I'd like to take a moment to thank the folks who've made this evening possible. I think we actually have someone here from Court Furniture is the sponsor for this event. They actually sponsored this series. Court supports more than 320 supportive housing organizations. That deserves some applause. And they have been helping to solve homelessness in over 38 cities. I'd also like to thank our speakers this evening for taking time out of their days and spending their evenings with us to share their perspectives on homelessness. And then some kind of housekeeping. Everybody's seat has a postcard on it, and that's how we will be taking questions this evening. And so towards the latter part of the evening, one of our speakers will kind of give a heads up to kind of round up your questions and pass them down to the end of the aisles, and then we'll help facilitate bringing those forward to the speakers to answer those questions. And with that, I'm going to share a little bit about who will be joining us this evening for our fireside chat. Mike Nichols, Director of City of Houston Department of Housing and Community Development. Mike serves as the Director of City of Houston Department in Housing Community Development. He has been an active participant in business and civic activities in Houston for more than 3 decades. As Director for HCD, Mike focuses on improving opportunities for all Houstonians to access safe homes they can afford in communities where they can thrive. Larry Satterwhite is the Director of Public Safety and Homeland Security for the City of Houston and has over 30 years of law enforcement experience. Larry is responsible for protecting Houston and the surrounding region. He is lead from the front problem solver focused on building trust with those he works with and the public at large. Mike Likes is Chief of Staff for Harris County Precinct 2, County Commissioner Adrian Garcia. Mike has 25 years of experience working in local, state, and federal political offices. Since joining the commissioner in January of 2019, Mike has worked to help push forward exciting initiatives put forward, including the nationally recognized Employed to Empower program that helps homeless in Harris County gain employment. He also oversees all operations of the precinct and worked with county leadership on the distribution of over $900 million in Federal American Recovery Plan Act funds. And last but not least, Kelly Young, CFTH President and CEO. She helps guide CFTH's overall mission and provides strategic leadership to manage the organization and navigate stakeholder relations. With over 20 years of leadership, change management, organizational and program design experience, Kelly's career has centered on building programs and leading organizations that serve vulnerable populations experiencing difficult social and health concerns. Please join me in welcoming them all to the stage.
You're gonna make me go to the middle.
Chief, where do you want to sit? I'll sit Amos.
All right. I feel like we need to separate city and county. I'm just saying.
Good.
Go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
don't know. I'd rather be together.
I'm joking. Okay, is it on? Oops. get it from there. I sound a little fuzzy, don't I? All right. That's your ears, not the mic. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. When we thought about this program, we thought we should switch mics. What we really wanted to do is have more of a conversation about it. I think a lot of times you get presentations or information that comes out as, here's what you need to know. And that's really helpful and important, but I also think part of it is understanding how the conversation and the flow happens between county, city, law enforcement, because at the heart of the work that CFTH has always done has been the collaborative nature of how we get along and what we do. And I think one of the things that gets passed over a lot, we hear a lot about our successes, which are amazing and wonderful, and just makes me so proud of all the people who came before me and the work that we do. What people don't always know is the nitty-gritty behind the scenes and how many conversations are had on a regular basis, working through differences of opinions, ideas, what's the best solution, what do we base this on? And I think the other core piece to CFTH, which is very important, is that we only move as the data moves. And so really working through and making sure that we use that data to decide on the right types of interventions, and the timings of those interventions become very important. And all three of these gentlemen play a very important role in the work that we're moving forward towards. So I'm going to open it up. I'm going to answer some of the questions myself, but I'm really just going to let this be more free-flowing. We didn't add a ton of questions because we wanted the conversation to happen. And then we will definitely do questions. Questions, not comments. You can send me a comment later, but we're only doing questions tonight. All right.
And feel free to answer any of the questions, too.
No, I'm going to pass it on. The other thing is make sure you take this with you. This gives you a lot of details about CFTH, and that way you can get the details that you need. So, what I wanted to do when we start off today is just to kind of kick things off. I really want each of you to share your connection with the work and what motivates you to be a part of this response to homelessness. I'm going to start with Mike.
Like to push a button? No, it's perfect. Thank you. So I'm Mike Nichols, and I used to have Kelly's job. And I am so proud that she's taken this job because she can do so much better than I do. In this work we were discussing, I'll just say this, what you're going to hear tonight is about a team approach to this homelessness that we've been working on. But one of the things I said is Kelly Young will hold people accountable. And my staff said, well, how do you feel about that? Didn't you hold people accountable? And my answer was, not as good. So how I got into homelessness, many of you know the story, but I still like it. My youngest daughter came home from Zambia, where she had won a fellowship, was there for a year. She showed up and said, I'm leaving in 10 days to go be with my high school boyfriend in Seattle. She gets to Seattle, and I said, you need a job? And she got a job doing outreach for elderly homeless women. And she would call me every night, 8 o'clock her time, 11 o'clock our time, and yell at me and say, how can you leave me a country that leaves 90-year-old women on the street? How can you do that? And not long after that is when Mayor Turner called and said, what do you think about working with the coalition? And so that's how I got involved. It has been a great honor to be involved in. One of the things as I look over this crowd, there's some people here who are at the beginning of the homeless response system. And I always like name people when I get in trouble because I didn't see the person who's been here the longest. But this is a very impressive crowd. And one way I wish, Kelly, we could just go around and talk about what people did, because these people are here from the very beginning. Chief?
All right, hello. You know, I'm very loud. You know what? How about this? Can anybody hear me? Pretty good? All right, so I'm Larry Satterwhite, and I was law enforcement for 34 years at Houston Police Department. I retired as your interim chief of police. on August 13th, and on August 20th, the mayor appointed me to take over as Director of Public Safety and Homeland Security. So I clearly I'm not very good at retirement. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my role and how I'm in this and what we're doing. But I don't want to miss this time to express again our condolences and our well wishes for our Houston firefighter, fire department family. We lost Marcelo Garcia just a few days ago, and tomorrow is going to be his funeral. And I think a lot has gone out in terms of asking the city to respond in ways that they can show their love and their respect and sacrifice, because HFD is hurting. Tom Munoz, chief of police, or chief of fire, is a dear friend of mine, and we go way back, and it's crushing him and it's crushing all of them. So please keep them in your prayers. Tomorrow, the funeral will be downtown, so just be prepared for that. Because there will probably be delays, but understand those delays are because we're trying to honor a man who gave his life to protect others. So, I think it's important to say that before I start on this. So, okay, so how am I involved? Well, I mentioned the 34 years part, and I have been working with the homeless and so many other things, which is very normal in law enforcement for almost my entire career. And I always said the same thing, that it is not humane and it is not caring to allow someone to continue in their own human waste and live out that life, because too often I personally have been there to see the tragic end of what that leads to. I can tell you, when you live on the streets and you continue to live on the streets, there is a trajectory and it has a tragic end, and along the way they live a miserable life, and everybody around them is impacted too, and everybody hurts. So we have a role to play in law enforcement as partners with Coalition, with Mike, with Mike. We're all in this together, and our role is to be just that, to be that compassionate partner that's there to help them, because sometimes these are tense situations, and you need that extra person on the street, on the scene, that has that training, has that ability to help make sure that that is carried out in a safe manner, so that we can get them to the care that they need. So law enforcement homelessness is not a police problem. A lot of people have many times said that, and I push back on that all the time. It is a societal problem. We are partners in trying to correct it and trying to get all those people who are most vulnerable to a better place for themselves, where they can stand on their own 2 feet, and also for all the other people who their hearts break for them, but they're also impacted personally, business-wise, and you name it. So this is, it's a big problem. It's not going to be solved overnight. You're going to hear that tonight. We have to manage expectations, but I am very excited to be a part of this team, and I represent law enforcement across. I've already collaborated with all of our law enforcement chiefs in the area, and constables and sheriffs. Everybody's on board. Everybody wants to step up and make a difference. So that's the good news. It's just be patient with us. It's going to take some time.
Hello, I'm Mike Lights, Chief of Staff for Commissioner Garcia. And I got involved with homelessness through Commissioner Garcia. When he got into office in 2019, homelessness was an issue that he deeply cares about. As most of you guys know, he was a HPD police officer for over 20 years. He saw the homelessness on the streets and had a profound impact on him. He loves to tell the story. I don't know if he loves, but he does tell the story quite a bit to the staff. When he was an HPD police officer, he used to care for a homeless man that was on his beat. And one day he was actually off duty, and found out the next day that homeless person had passed away while he was off duty. And I think that's something that's always profoundly touched him, and something he's always thought about. And that's why he takes such a compassionate approach to homelessness, and the importance of trying to work collaboratively with the public approach to try to do what we can to curb or reduce homelessness here in Houston. He also knows from his time as sheriff, that it is not compassionate, humane, or in the taxpayer's best interest to criminalize homelessness and to keep them in the jail system. When he was the sheriff, he would get incredibly frustrated. I worked on his campaigns as sheriff, and he was always frustrated that sometimes these homeless folks would stay in the jail for 30, 60, 90 days and just be released right back into the street and just go right back into homelessness with nothing there to help support them. So one of the initiatives and kind of how he really got involved with homelessness as county commissioners, he wanted to convert the old jail into like a respite center. When they came out of the jail, they could go in there and get care and get some support services around there. Unfortunately, that building is just unusable, and we kind of really got things kicked off and Commissioner really got involved when Mike Nichols called the commissioner and said, hey, can you help us with some homelessness? And he jumped on and told all our staff, yeah, you guys start figuring out a way, work with the coalition to figure out how the county can jump in and help. So that's kind of how we got involved with it. And we've been working really closely with the coalition through Mike and the transition to Kelly. It's been a wonderful partnership. And just, I don't know if you guys know this, but before 2019, the county really didn't do anything financially or any other way to support the city and other organizations who help with the homelessness situation. So it's been a great partnership so far. We look forward to hopefully continue.
And I always like to just talk a little bit about my background. First of all, I'm very lucky. You always want to take a job as a CEO where you get to build on other people's success. And there are many people in the room who really built the success that I get to carry forward into the next step. But I've been in some level of social service since I was in junior high. I was what was called a people tutor, which was someone who helped individuals with physical disabilities learn athletics and get involved in sports. And from there, I always knew that part of my mission in life was to make the world a better place for other people, either by being a kind and generous human being most of the time, about 85% of the time, 15% of the time, not very great, but 85% of the time. And that when people recognize other people's strengths and understand how they want to see and be in the world, that you can be a great support system for making that happen for them. I worked in a shelter with children who've been abused. I worked in residential treatment with boys 11 to 13. I worked in domestic and sexual violence work, HIV, health, and then substance use and employment services for people coming out of homelessness. So I've done a lot of people work and human work, but my brain is actually systems focused. I like to see how things need to fit together and the pieces that make a puzzle either complete, or if the picture changes, I know how to move the pieces around to make that work. And so when this position became open, it was a perfect fit for my brain and my heart to work together. The most interesting piece about all the work I've done is that if you don't have a safe place to live, none of the work and none of the interventions I did stop. That's really hard to realize that your work over that long period of time didn't really result in what you hoped for everyone, because they didn't, at the end of the day, have a place to live. I fundamentally do not find it controversial that we have a safe place for somebody from the day they're born to the day they die to live. I don't think we need to be divided in our efforts to make sure that everybody has a safe place to be. And this work allows me to work across systems, across funders, across people who have tremendous influence about how policy is shaped, to both figure out the really brainiac, nerdy side, as well as the human side. And so I'm very grateful that these lovely gentlemen decided to join me tonight. The reason they were picked is because it's important to always recognize that the coalition sits between county and city and really trying to push forward both of their perspectives of what needs to happen in homelessness. And they've been tremendous partners over the last 3 years in terms of funding, but also just ideas. Like the number of times I'll get a call like, hey Kelly, what do you think about this? It's just really refreshing. You can go to a ton of other cities and that conversation will not happen. The fact that Mike, first of all, too bad one of you's not named Ike, and then I could be like Mike and Ike. But that the two of them had no qualms at all. Like, I'm just gonna come, of course, and sit and talk about this. They may not agree on everything. There might be a fist fight at the end of the night. I can't promise that that won't happen. But at the heart of it, they show up for the people we're supposed to serve. And I really, really appreciate Director Satterwhite, Chief Satterwhite. He got thrown into this, was not necessarily on his plate of things to do, and he has taken it like the champion I know. And here's what I think is funny. Whenever he responds to one of my texts, he says, copy. And I'm like, does he want me to copy this? Like, so that was one of my favorite things ever. I'm gonna love that forever. I'm gonna keep that text forever just for that reason. But the other piece that I think is vastly important as we move into this next part is we've had a lot of success, but the coalition in itself has never thought that we were done. You know, 60% is a fabulous number, but there's still 40%. And that doesn't mean that we don't want to keep going and growing. What we know as a system is you evolve, and if you don't evolve, you die. And so the systems work about this continues, and the systems are us working together in these partnerships. And so I wanted to make sure that this conversation was centered around not just one perspective, but 4 different ways of having to think about it, because I want to broaden our perspective of the work that needs to be done so that we show up in the ways that we need to moving forward. So, some of the things I want to find out from all of you is, what do you think have been the significant successes in terms of responding to homelessness, and what remains?
So I think the significant successes are that Houston and Harris County is unique in the country because we have the county and the city working together. Many of you, or some of you, were with me when the folks from Los Angeles came, the most powerful people in the biggest county in the country, and you want to talk about fist fights. 86 cities of more than 100,000 people, I think was the number, but it's a mess, and they'll never get it right. That is a huge success for us that we have chosen a route. And the second success is a decision made a long time ago, and again, the folks in the room who were there when the decision was made, that we would focus on the most vulnerable people first, the people most likely to die. And that would be our focus. And I wasn't at the table, but I imagine there was a big fight. And because some people said, why would you do that? Those people are the least likely to be successful. But that won out. And that was a great decision. And of course, the unbelievable response is that these people are in deep pain, deep trauma, and 85% to 90% have been very successful. Those 2 things, I think, are the unique success beyond housing 28,000 people.
Okay, so I'll say that,
Success.
I may not figure this thing out today, okay? So I will just talk loud again. So, seeing the thousands that have already been housed is a huge success for the city, and it happened during my tenure in law enforcement in the Houston Police Department. So that's a huge success. What we did in HPD is also some successes is understanding some of the complexity around this problem and around the national problem that we face, matter of fact, the world problem, which is mental health. It's a huge problem in our country, in our nation. We don't spend enough money and resources on it. And I'm sure Mike's going to talk a little bit about that. But what we did in HPD is we created a whole new division called the Mental Health Division. And within that Mental Health Division, which has all kinds of outreach and especially trained officers for response to crisis situations, we also created our homeless outreach team, which is law enforcement with additional training and outreach in terms of how to best respond to our homeless community that has so many different problems. So these are successes because these are well-trained law enforcement officials coupled with doctors, coupled with clinicians, going out there and doing the hard work and making a difference. And we have a lot of names that we can point to that we saved because of that. We are not anywhere near done, but I always considered that to be, I was always very proud of that we created that division and led the country, I think, in that, because recognizing just what we face and what we see now, the success is that we are seeing, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I am feeling, and I've talked to my colleagues up here about it and so many others, that we have the wind at our backs, that we are having conversations with state and federal legislators, elected officials, that we're having conversations with nonprofits and everybody else, and everybody is saying the same thing now. We seem to be much more closely unified, all pulling in the same direction, that this is going to take some resources and some effort, some law changes, and we'll probably get into that a little bit later. But that is a success, because getting everybody, like Mike so eloquently said, first getting everybody together here was the big challenge. Well, we're almost there on that, so that's huge. Now we just have to do the work.
I want to start with the CHIP program as being extremely successful. This was the brainchild of Coalition for the Homeless, and Mark Eichenbaum at the time of the city brought this to the county. It was an unprecedented investment in trying to address the issue of homelessness. I believe it was a little over $150 million that we were able to invest into the program, and it was simply because COVID happened, and we had $900 million the county got, the city got something comparable, so we were able to invest that money in it. It's been an extremely successful program. I think, Kelly, you would know better. I think we've housed 18 to 20,000 people through that program. But the county also did some things I think were proactive that helped people not go into homelessness. We were able to invest money into a rental assistance program that was nationally recognized. Harris County, we were so successful in it that other cities and other counties who weren't as successful or couldn't spend their money, the federal government would send it to us and say, hey, you guys' program has been so successful, we want to keep investing in that. I think that helped be very proactive. We've also been able to invest money into eviction services to help them with Lone Star, Legal Aid, and other people so they can stay in their homes instead of being kicked out. And that's the truth. And we've been able to get some of that money for that type of program because it's a lot smaller into our general budget. So we'll be able to continue the services, but probably not at the breadth that we were able to do when we had that COVID money, that ARPA money. I also want to make just a little plug for my boss too at a program he created with Employee to Empower. This is a program where you take people where they're at, out in the streets, and you give them an opportunity to come work for $15 an hour. They work in the county. They'll paint parking lots. They'll take graffiti off the streets, do some minor type of stuff, working with the sheriff's office out there, so the neighbors don't get nervous with those types of people working. If they don't show up one day because they just forget or something happens, they're not fired. They can come back the next day and we'll give them a job out there. It's been an extremely successful program. We've had about a little over 700 people come through the program, housed close to 70 or 80 people, I believe. Some of these individuals have gotten jobs now in the counties within some of the precincts, and we've been extremely pleased with the results of that. He got that idea from when he was a city councilman, and some of his neighbors in his council district were complaining about the homeless. He said, I can fix that. I'm gonna give them jobs. And go out there, and they would go out there and they would mow old people's homes who couldn't mow their lawn anymore and take down trees and stuff. One lady had like a broken up, I think it was a driveway. And they went out there and they fixed it. And that woman came out there and gave all those guys a hug. And one of the guys started crying. And City Councilman Garcia said, why are you crying? He said, nobody's ever given me that kind of appreciation or respect. So he was bugging us from maybe the first day he got, I want to recreate this program. I mean, you got the money, boss. I'm sorry, we got the money. We finally found the money in our budget. And now we got it into the county budget. So it's a county-wide program now, and all four precincts are utilizing it. So we've been very happy with the progress of that program.
So I have a lot that I think is successful about the system. One is that because everybody got to the table and maybe there were fist fights at the beginning, people actually had to stop cherry picking their clients. And they actually had to serve who was supposed to be served. and they had to change their models, and they had to be better at their work, and they had to show up for the people we were supposed to serve. And that was not an easy thing to do, but it was a huge success. I think it also created a system versus a charity response. Love charities, love donors who give from charitable foundations, but this is not a charitable response only. It is a systems response. You have to have consistent dollars that you can use and manipulate and move as you need to be able to serve people where they are at and what is happening at the time. The 2 times that the system did a tremendous job with that was Harvey and then COVID, where they took advantage of federal dollars that came down and figured out a really, really smart and efficient and pragmatic way to resolve more and more of homelessness from the street. Lots of other people did lots of other things with those monies, didn't get as far, and so then we sit in the same position, they sit in the same position, and actually worse, than where Harris County, Montgomery County, Fort Bend County, and the city of Houston sit now. So those are tremendous successes because that requires everybody to stay on the shared agenda. We all agreed to certain things and we don't move off of those. It doesn't mean that we don't do other things, we don't add to that, we don't have our own ways of dealing with those things, but at the core of it, we stay centered in what the work is and how we approach the work. And that is housing first. It is ensuring that at the end of any intervention is a permanent solution for that individual. And in our case, it really was to help move people very quickly off the street and into housing. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, it's just a limitation that I don't think very many people understand about the coalition's funding and the limitations we have with it. So when we don't have huge amounts of money come in because of disasters or pandemics, we have a certain amount of money that comes in, basically allocated to us by HUD every year to fund the current programs that we already run. So there's no new money on a regular basis that comes in. The only reason Houston has been able to do better is because over the years we figured out how to take advantage of bonus dollars and opportunities by making sure our application to HUD was solid, that we spent our money, that every bed was utilized. And why other places still struggle is they've never started with that pure piece of commitment from the beginning that said the beds belong to the people who we serve, not to the agency. You know, the dollars you spend are to be spent on the people we serve, not to feed you. And with that commitment, what you have is every one of us come up on the stage, we've already got that commitment down. We don't have to come back to that commitment every single time. So the baseline is set. The second piece I think around that is because it funds current programs, every time somebody calls me and says, hey, can you come get this homeless person out of my neighborhood? My response is no. First of all, that's kidnapping and I'm not allowed and I don't want to be arrested. Second of all, no, that's just wrong. I'm sorry you're unhappy that somebody's in your neighborhood that makes you uncomfortable. And third, I don't have the funding to do that. We can only build if we build a secondary level of funding coming in. We could prove through COVID dollars what it would take to house everyone and get us to equilibrium. We proved it. Now all we need is the consistent funding to back that up. So it's not a weakness, it's just something I think is important for everybody to understand as we move into these next couple, particularly the next year, because we don't have the money, but we're gonna forge ahead. We're still gonna make some really tough decisions. We're gonna be very pragmatic. We recognize the things that maybe feel, for most people who don't understand how it works, like how can you leave somebody on the street? Well, if the only dollars I have are my COC dollars, I have to wait till they're on the street before I can do something for them. And that means it's a limitation based on the funding I get, not a limitation in my mind or my interest or my ability to provide intervention. So I like to make that distinction because I think it's important. As we move forward, I think one of the most important pieces is because we know how to get to equilibrium. We built a system that works very well. We have committed partners, everybody at this stage, that to get to equilibrium, all we're really needing is the funding. And until the funding comes in, we're gonna work really, really hard together, and we're gonna make a lot of mistakes, and people are gonna wanna, pit us against each other and talk dirt and do whatever, and we're gonna ignore all of it because that's what we've always done. We're gonna continue to show up for each other. We're gonna try some stuff out. It may work great, Y'all may laugh at it later and be like, that was the dumbest idea I ever saw. But we're gonna keep going until we figure out the next perfect path until that money comes. Because if we can figure that path out, when the money comes, that's easy. Then you just give the money out and you move forward. So not necessarily weaknesses, but just things, realities about our system as a whole. So I know we can all agree that housing people who've been living on the street is key, is our strategy, is where we will always end, is where we will always start. But with that said, how will you be working during the next year with your teams to achieve that? And in a year from now, how will you know that we got there?
So in late February, I'm enjoying my retirement of 20 days, and I get a call, actually, this is the truth, from a friend of mine who says, you're going to be director of housing for the city. And I had not gotten a call from the mayor. And I said, where'd you hear that? They said, the mayor was at a meeting. And I went, okay. So, 10 days later, I get the call from the mayor. He says, do you want to do this? And I said, yes. Because I thought, that's a good chance to learn. I've been reading the paper. And I said, I would like to learn how to do this. And then he came, after I got the job, he said, oh, by the way, homelessness is yours because Mark Eichenbaum is going to go to the private sector. And I thought, okay, I thought I could just put that aside. So what are we going to do the next year? And I have to tell one more story, then I'm done. My father was an accountant, a certified public accountant. And beginning as a kid, he said, you need to take a lot of finance and accounting, Mike. You really need to know this stuff. And of course, I'm a kid in the late 60s, 70s, and I thought, I don't need to take accounting. That's for somebody else. And that was karma for the next rest of my life. All I've had to deal with in private groups, in public. When I was a volunteer for Bill White, I worked on the pension problems. It's always been complex finance. That's what it has been. It's my whole life. And so what I'm going to spend the next year on is complex financing, just like I've done my whole life. Not that I'm good at it, but it's been my karma. And so what I'm going to do this year's two things. I'm going to find $70 million to fund a program that the coalition and my team, led by Melody Barr, who's here, have worked together to put a good budget together to really kick this program off and make sure we don't go backwards and we can even go forward. Item 2, we're going to look diligently and hard with the city, with the county, with the state legislature for funding, for sustainable funding, because that's the secret to this. And that money's there. It's just a matter of how we do it. And the mayor, when I talked to the mayor with this, he says, they got funding for stadiums, they've got funding for Houston First, they got funding for a lot of things. We should have funding for the, I didn't use the word, but one of the most important issues of our time, which is this homelessness issue. And I think he clearly knows, Chief, that after safety, homelessness is right there as the issue. So we're going to find that sustainable funding. And in talking to people, they want to know, what is it today? We got good ideas, but it's going to take first, try to work with the legislature to move toward that sustainable funding. If not, we're going to look at other issues. Again, shout out to Melody Barr and her team. I said, Melody, we need money for this program. And she said, it's really don't have any. And about, I don't know, 3 weeks later, she says, oh, I found $14 million. And the next day was 16, another 2. But the thing she did was she made really hard decisions because the focus of the department was we need to get this, make sure this homelessness issue continues to improve, and it takes money to do that. So that was step 1, and that's what I'm going to spend my year on. How do I know we're gonna be successful? One, sometime in 2025, hopefully, we won't have anybody who's forced to sleep on the street while they wait for housing. And that's a big, big ask. And the chief calls it a moonshot. That's our moonshot, because we can get there. And of course, y'all know this, because there's so many people here, it means we need to house a lot of people to get that done. It's not a matter of building a building to move all those people there, it's a matter of housing a bunch of people to be able to do that. So that's how we know we're successful, and that we have a sustainable funding stream.
Well, I'm asking Melody Barr to look under my couch cushion. Because she is amazing, and she does find the resources, and you're like, how? And then maybe you shouldn't ask how. You should just go in. You know, law enforcement, I am their partner. When the mayor put this team together, right after I took over as Director of Public Safety and Homeland, you know, he knew I had a lot of background in a lot of these different areas, and the mayor's 50-year guy, you know, in terms of policy and law and legislative issues, and understands teams, and he understands that you've got to have all the pieces if you really want to be successful. And so he's on the law enforcement piece to partner with Mike, who is housing community development. So we partnered up together, and through Mike I met Kelly, and then of course I already knew Wayne Young, who is over the Harris Center, which is a huge part of this, and they do great work when it comes to mental illness. Mike and I are getting to know each other and with the county, but I have several other partners there that I was already talking to. I already talked to the sheriff. We spent some time talking about it in Chicago when we were preparing, because you know Houston has some other big things coming that are also on the plate, World Cup and RNC and some other things. But we talked about it, and then Mike Lee, who spent a lot of time with HPD before he went over, and the Sheriff Gonzalez is number 2. He's well accustomed. We talk all the time. Tommy Diaz, he's assistant chief. These are partners, and I can talk about others. Constable Rosen and with Precinct 1 and all the other constables. We are all in. And so what I see going forward and is working with everybody, bringing all of my friends. Hopefully they'll still keep taking my phone calls. Because you know the mayor waited until I was retired from the Houston Police Department, where I did have at least about 5,000 men and women in uniform that I could say, hey, we're going to do this. And now I'm in the big in that spot of asking for help from my colleagues, Chief Diaz for HPD, and Sheriff Gonzalez, and our constables, and everybody else. But that's okay. Again, right now they're still responding, and I greatly appreciate it. We simply can't do it without them. And then working with the partners. I think I saw Sonia come in with Houston Area Women's Center, Sonia Cross. We have so many people in the room that are engaged in the same effort. They're in the fight with us, and there's some really great stories. I will not steal your thunder, Sonia, but if you get a chance, check out Houston Area Women's Center and what they're doing. It's awesome. But I just say that to say that there's so many partners, and law enforcement is your partner with everybody. And I don't want to leave out fire. You know, Chief Munoz, he's already agreed to help because they are just as involved in responding to our persons who are in crisis on the street. A lot of the times they're the ones that are saving their lives, and then we get them transported to the hospital because that's the condition that we find them in sometimes. So just know that for my part, and Mike said it, the goal is through next year, by the end of the year, that we don't have anybody in the city and in the county that is homeless, that we haven't been able to find a spot for. And Kelly's much better at explaining this phrase of equilibrium that I will let her lean on, but the bottom line is we want to lead the country in this effort. And so we are all in on this because, yes, public safety number one. What pops up all the time, especially in our financial sectors and everywhere else, in communities that are impacted by this is the issue, okay? It's a terrible travesty for somebody to be homeless, and we know where that leads. So this is the issue right behind public safety, and that's how important it is across the nation.
I have to add a couple other things to what you said. Having the chief as my partner opens amazing doors. 2 examples. Metro. Metro has a huge issue on homelessness and a huge expense for dealing with the issue. I couldn't get to Metro. He got to the chief security at Metro, no problems. Texas Medical Center, how many y'all have talked about them all the time? And you know, I couldn't get to them. The chief has gotten to them, and that's going to be a big part of the success of what we do. So those are two things. The doors open because of what he's done for how many years with the police?
34.
34 years. Thank you, Mike. Sorry.
And I'm just gonna step in real quick. If you have questions, it's a good time to start writing them down because we are gonna come and collect them soon.
It's a good question, Kelly. I had to think about it for a little bit. And, I agree with Mike. Success is making sure that, and what Chief Satterwhite had said, that success is making sure that anybody who doesn't want to be on the street will have a place to sleep at night. But it's all going to come down to funding, because we know we can do it. We know we've been successful at it. We've proven that, but the funding's not there. And with the ARPA money going away, we have a real issue that needs to be confronted. So, in regards to success, I would say that if we were able to get the legislature to allow us to have some sort of funding mechanism that we could get in place, some sort of special district, which other entities around the country are able to develop, but currently we are not. If we're able to get some sort of legislation like that passed through the legislature, so we can have a sustainable funding source that's within our area, it's done by people, maybe hotels, some sort of hotel tax or liquor tax or something like that, that the proceeds could be used to go towards homeless. I would consider that a huge success. The goal, and if we're successful, if we're able to get that $70 million, that's the goal. And the county's looking at every which way in which we can. Today we took a big step, I think, at Commissioner's Court, maybe take a percentage of the TERS money that comes in and using that specifically for homeless. Now in the county, we only have a couple. We don't have too many TERS, so it's not going to fill that hole. It's a starting place, a tool that we can put into our toolbox, but we need a lot more tools. We just don't have them here right now. We need the legislature's help. We need the federal government's help to help give us those tools so we can do it and do it ourselves, right? Kelly's been up to DC with the commissioner. They're going to have funding of mental health, right? If funding for mental health goes away, we're going to have a lot bigger problem on our hands. That's just a fact, right? So we got to work with our federal and state partners to make sure that funding does not go away, right? If we are successful in that, I think we can say we have it.
What I find most interesting, and maybe it sounds redundant to everybody in the audience, but because we keep saying funding, right? The core of this is we already know how to do it. We have proven it. We're a national model of success. We have the pieces in place. We have the partners. We have the commitment from all the people in the systems we need to be involved. And we're a city that lacks the last piece of it, which is a mechanism where consistent funding can come in. Other places have all the money in the world. They have no collaboration, no ability to house people, and no actual commitment by all the systems that have to work. We've already done all of the hard work. This is the hard work. The dollars should just come because we have proven that we are able to get to what my team and I'm working on is the idea of equilibrium. And so equilibrium simply means that those that might fall into homelessness or experiencing homelessness move through that process in 30 days and are rehoused. And if we can achieve that, then we know that we create the least amount of trauma on an individual and the least amount of trauma in the community. And what you do is you right-size your homeless response system to be big enough just to handle that emergency piece and not have to grow bigger and bigger and bigger because more and more people are on the street. I don't want to run a 300-person agency that has to spend billions and billions of dollars on housing people. That's a terrible, terrible plan. It won't work. I want to run this section that helps when there's an emergency and helps move forward those interventions, but I partner with everybody along the river. All the lovely social workers in the audience know what I mean by the river, right? You're down at the end, you're pulling people out. The whole goal is to go up and see why they're falling in. And then at each step of the way, you figure out how to pull a better intervention. We can get to equilibrium. That can be our next national win, because we would be the first city to actually get there. Now, Austin is on the challenge. So I want to tell you right now, and they're only asking for $35 million a year, so whatever, Austin.
35 times 10.
Yes, well, we have 70 times 10, so. But for that purpose, now I'm just in it because, yeah, I don't care about Longhorn fans. No. Houston is way, way better. Don't throw anything at me, you know. But here's the piece that's so interesting to me about it, and why what the team is working on with the coalition is it is not about us changing the way we do work. It's about deepening the work that we do. It's about looking at that group. So when we look at data and we're using data to determine, we see two different populations. We see those that are on the street, staying on the street, and then on the street all day long as they're getting service. And then we see a whole bunch of people who are there during the day getting service. And some of those individuals are managing their lives lovely and going along, and some of them are still really, really struggling with substance use and mental health. And we have no way to compel those individuals who cannot speak for themselves to say, I need something now and I need this kind of help. We cannot compel them into care. So when somebody calls me and says, well, see that person, I'm like, yes, I see that person. I've seen them every single day. That's not because I don't want to do something for that person, but because of the way it's set up, I am unable to just force somebody into care. We can't force people into shelters or any place. We can ask. We can really work hard at our work, at outreach, and as service providers, and as people who do case management and all that work, to talk with people and build rapport and do all that work, which is first, way before Larry even shows up, right? Larry would rather not show up at any of the interventions if we could get somebody where they need to go. But he's gonna show up in partnership with us to try to do the best we can by that person. Since we don't have the dollars to house everybody, we're in what's the ebb of the cycle. We had the flow for 3 years. We're in the ebb. So during this time is really about finding our lane and the 6 lanes that need to be lined up with us so we can push forward through what needs to happen. We want to build what is necessary to get to equilibrium. We want to encourage partners to really think about how they want to do their work and how they add to this work. We want to convene people in a multidisciplinary model that has lots of people show up who have very different perspectives and not shut down that conversation, but encourage that conversation and then figure out how to make the connections. And we want to work with our partners to make sure that they have the resources and we've aligned things correctly so that when the money comes, because the money will come, that we are ready to go. We don't want to sit and wait and then we'll wait till the money comes. We want to be ready. We want to be ahead of the game. And what I can tell you and why I'm very encouraged about being able to get to equilibrium is every system partner that I have is excited about the work. They're interested in figuring out how to do it differently, how to add to it. Here's the different ways we could think about it. Because unless we all do that together from a systems perspective, we're all doing it alone. And what COVID taught us is we don't do very much alone very well. It separated us all out. It separated all that great work that pulled us all together. And I know it feels like COVID was a million years ago, but it's really not in terms of the social impact of what happened. You still have people who still want to show up after 3 years of having to kind of bury their heads and survive and work on this together. That's pretty amazing. So what we'll be spending the next year doing is asking people to come to the table with new ideas and different thoughts, and we're not leading the conversation, we're having a dialogue. We're not going to agree on everything. People are going to have their own ways of doing stuff. They have their own mandates, their own requirements. But we then find the shared agenda. That's how this all started. And we stay focused on that shared agenda, and we work through the things that maybe everybody thinks differently about, and we push forward. Legislatively, we know that we have to help figure out a way to give tools to people to be able to compel them to stay in care longer than 72 hours. Anybody in this room has a severely mentally ill family member, friend, worked with someone, you know the pain and the suffering that person is going through and what your family has gone through trying to get that person the help they actually need. Now, I am not, and Wayne Young were up here, I'm not interested in institutionalizing people. I'm interested in getting people care. And then when they're cared for and they're ready, then their independence means something. They don't just cycle back onto the street and I drive by them again the next day and go, why can I not do something for that person? I don't want that anymore. I don't want to drive, I live in Midtown. I don't want to drive down the street and see all the individuals every day that I know have been on that street for as long as I've been living in Midtown because I cannot get them the care that they actually need. It is not a law enforcement mechanism. It is a care mechanism. And we're going to have to spend a lot of time educating people on the difference. But without that, the same group of individuals that are now to the point where everybody thinks and assumes that's what homelessness means and are not cared for the way they are, is making it difficult for us to get past that and really move on in the work that we need to do. So those are the things we're working on. These are very tough conversations, complicated issues. Nobody has the complete answer. Everybody will be unhappy, but everybody will be served. So how will I know that success happened? Everybody will be served. There will be a door for everybody to walk through. That front door will be, for lack of a better term, everybody laughs at me because I should have been a librarian, I guess. It's like the information referral person desk at a library. They walk through a door and anything that they need is already answered at that door. You need diversion, you only need $320? Are you kidding? We'll figure out how to get you $320 because that's gonna save me $19,000 by not having to wait till you're on the street to house you. You need 2 years of rent? Okay, yeah, well, let's figure out how to do that. Tell me what your steps are gonna be. And you can have 2 years of rent, not just one because that's the only dollars we have. You need permanent supportive housing? Absolutely. We're gonna make sure you have your disability and everything's set up so that you get to a place that is solid and safe for you to live in. And at the same time, if none of those things are the things you need, I've got other providers who are doing other work. You need a better job, you want to go back to school, whatever it is. That front door versus having to wait to the street is what will change over the next year. It is going to require everybody to think about their neighborhood, their work, their partnerships, their service models differently, more fluid, more complex. But we already did all the really, really hard work. We built a system, we figured out the right answer, we housed thousands and thousands of people. We can do this part. That can happen. So what I ask of everybody in the audience is I want you to really consider how you can advocate one more step. Most people don't love to talk to legislators. They're like, oh, it's government, I don't care about politics. Okay, I don't know what to tell you. You know, it's rough. It's a rough world in politics. But it is your legislators. I've sat in meetings and hearings and heard them want to know what they should do. And if we're not willing to go and tell them that in a way that honors their perspective as well as our perspective, we're going to miss the opportunity. And we cannot miss this opportunity. This is our one shot to get this to happen in the next couple years, or you will see mental health on the street more. You'll see people on the street more. You'll see people falling into homelessness more. It's just inevitable because the dollars are not there to secure that. So all I can ask of you is learn, become knowledgeable about homelessness. Don't just read information. There's a ton of information that does not equal knowledge. Really, really understand it. Take the time to understand how to support those organizations in the community already doing this work. And then lastly, figure out who your legislators are and just drop them a line, visit them in the office, let them know you care about it. You don't have to be a policy wonk to do that. They just need to know that somebody out there actually is interested in this beyond who shows up at their door like me. They don't want to listen to me, they already know what my arguments are going to be. I've already given to them. They need to know from you. You are the people that matter to them. So those are my asks. And then the last thing is learn more about CFTH. It is really the body that moves the response system forward. It supports the organizations that are out there, and it spends all of its time with Mike, Larry, and Mike. I think last week we literally spent like 25 hours together. I was like, wow, I spend more time with them than anybody I know. And I love them. And they really, I would not, anybody who knows me knows this, because they all laugh. They're like, how can you possibly be my favorite? Because you say that to everybody. These seriously are some of my favorite human beings, as well as all of you in the audience that I've ever said that to, because I spend no time and no energy with people I don't like and who I don't think will show up. I don't have time for it, I don't like it, it's a waste of my energy. So when I say you're a favorite, it's because you are a favorite. You are in where I'm going. And so these are individuals who have really, really difficult jobs, lots and lots of demands, and they show up 25 hours out of the week to talk with me about the same thing over and over and over again because they're committed. So I hope this was helpful just to kind of hear the voices and the people that are behind this work, and a little bit about what the coalition is doing. I know that's not as specific as we can get, but we'll have more sessions that are more specific. I do want to make sure I had time for questions. Did I do that right? Where's my 5? I wanted to see my paddle. Oh, did you? Sorry. All right. Oh, look, it's organized and everything. All right, so these are questions to individuals, so I'm going to ask you specifically. Mike Nichols, how do you find 70 million? Does that money come from programs that are not showing success?
How do we find 70 million? Well, I want to make sure I start with, Kelly spoke about going to legislators and councilmen and people in politics. I want to start with some people who are very important, and that's our philanthropic community, those people who are committed to systems. Houston is an amazing place. We built a river from the Galveston Bay to Houston using public-private partnerships. We built beautiful bikeways using public-private partnerships. CHIP had public-private partnerships. Philanthropy in Houston understands that they don't mask bad government. They use their funds to leverage governmental funding. So those of you who know people who are in philanthropy, talk to them about this. This is a great investment. It's a one-year investment that will carry on for decades. I don't want to miss that. If we don't pull together this money and homelessness goes the other direction, it may cost Satterwhite me my job, and it may even cost the mayor his job. But the worst will be, it will break a system that's wonderful, that works. So I want to say, this is so important. How do you find it? Yes, there are programs that didn't spend their money, and we're going to go find that money. There are arguments we'll have with city council. We had the first city general fund money put in place last week, $3.5 million. That was a big opportunity. We're going to go get that money. We're going to talk to the county. We're going to talk to Metro. We're going to talk to TERS. We're going to talk to management districts, and we're going to explain. Put the money up today, one time. And if we get it right, you won't have to put it up every year. Metro, great example. They're spending a huge amount on security. If we could get this rolling, they don't have to do that. We were at Herman Park, one of the great places ever, and they're spending a lot of money. The question they had is, do we need to spend another $1 million a year on security and cleanup? You know, we got to get this right now, and so the pressure is on all of us to find this money and make this #1 priority. That's how I'm going to find it.
Not only that, that's one of the other things. They get shit done. They just do. I mean, what other city in America can incorporate a whole other major city after a hurricane? Only Houston can do that, right? We rebound from storms like no other place in this country. And I agree, public-private partnerships could be more important. That's why the commissioner, I know the mayor, have had some excellent conversations about, we got to get the GHP, and we got to get those businesses involved in this. It affects them. It affects their businesses. It affects downtown. And I think we've had some very good initial conversations with them, led by the mayor. And so, I think we're making progress, but yeah, it's not gonna be easy.
And I'm going to interrupt Mike one more time. I just have to say, Mike, you didn't say what I thought you were going to say, which is that in a year, we're taking care of people who live out in the county.
Yeah.
Because again, that's one of these issues about where you start, where you end.
Yeah.
In the end, it's all of Harris County.
Especially in our flood control channels, right? Thanks to the taxpayers, thanks to your votes last week, we did get that measure passed. It's going to help maintain our flood control channels a lot better. But you might not know it, there are a lot of homeless people now beginning to live along those channels. And when it floods, all that tent, all that stuff they have gets into our waterways, clogs it up, and can cause more flooding. So you're absolutely right, without a doubt.
And one of the things about programs that are maybe not as successful, will get successful. I don't know. I mean, I'm sorry, this is other people's money. So, if you're supposed to be doing something and you're not doing it, figure out why you're not doing it, do it different. I just, we can't rely on trying to make it okay for people who are mediocrely showing up. We're just not at that point anymore. And I know that bothers people. Are like, well, but we're trying really hard. Well, okay, but maybe you're not trying the right way. Change what you're doing. Come at it from a different perspective. I've worked in 3 organizations where by the time we got done, the program modeling had completely changed because we were running an old model. We were running what we thought we were supposed to be. We were selling that same story. We were doing that same work. And then finally one day we went, well, this is not working, and I'm not going to tell people anymore that 12,000 people got services because they went to a health fair. They did not. They went to a health fair, which is great, but that's not the same. So, I think it's okay for everybody. If we're all going to take the risk up here, everybody in the audience can also take that risk, especially service providers. Because I don't believe for 1 minute that a service provider doesn't want to do excellent work. I just think sometimes you get stuck in what you have and what money you get, and you get into this sort of poverty mindset yourself, and so it's hard to remember there's a million choices about how you do your work every single time. And the second question is what I want to make sure I answered was, what will the $70 million, how will they be allocated and what will it pay for? So in the modeling for equilibrium, the reason why we want unrestricted dollars that flow in is so that we as a community and the response system and the city, county, and everybody can get together and say, what is the actual need right now? Who is it that we're serving? So you know how many permit supported housing beds you need. You know how much rapid rehousing you need, outreach. You know that what we would get to do with unrestricted dollars is move further upstream and be able to support partners that are able to maybe catch people a little bit earlier. Or Mike can call me and be like, hey, we're seeing this whole issue with the flood areas. Can we think about a strategy for that in the next 6 months? When you have flexibility in dollars, you have flexibility in intervention, which means you get to bring more partners to the table. Because our baseline dollars that come in federally, we do a pretty good job of growing. And we want to grow those dollars, and they're going to support the overall system forever. But we need to make sure this is added on top of that so we have flexibility. How it would be allocated, and I say this and I give it as an example, so please note that it says example across it and not all reality, but Miami has kind of an interesting model. Different places have different models that already have tax dollars coming in some form or fashion, a fee system. And they have basically a trust of 27 people from the community, lots of different people that make up that group. They put together a community plan. Those people are the ones who decide where it goes. They have their coalition, like CFTH, oversees that process so that you have an entity who can manage fiscally and the risk management of the dollars and kind of make sure that grows and stays out of city, county, and sorry, I know you guys all love each other, but give them some money, they're gonna do something. So it sits there, but we collectively make those decisions as a group about how it gets allocated based on our data. What is our community telling us? What are we seeing across data points? And that's why if you're a provider, we need you to be involved in giving us your data. We're not trying to steal it, we're not gonna sell it. We're trying to figure out what are the complexities of the layering of interventions that's necessary for the people who need our system. All right. Go ahead and go. Okay, I heard on the radio today that President-elect Donald Trump is in favor of tent cities for the homeless on city county land. Is that a plan for Houston?
I'll take that. I actually heard it on the way in, and I went, that took a long time to get to the top. We do have to be very careful not to politicize this issue. And the political side is, when people are experiencing homelessness, is that, does that mean they need to be punished? Does that mean they are not good people? And can we just move them to a place out of sight? I'd love to take anybody who wants to go to Spokane, nice small city, they put a tent city up, and it's all it did is become a haven for drug and crime. And I am not a proponent of that. I love our system. When the mayor got frustrated last week, he spoke about something like that too. It's frustrating because it takes a long time. This isn't an easy answer. He's now, he has always been along with us. Sometimes it's a problem with inaction. But we're on that. That's not where we're going. It didn't surprise me that this became an issue. It's a major issue in the country. Now, if we don't solve the problem, it could come to that solution. And that'd be not the right solution for these individuals, not the right solution for the city. I was asked, will it never happen in Houston? And my answer is, we gotta be successful.
And Kelly's point earlier, this is where we need your help, right? Our system works, and we need your help in advocating to our federal partners, our members of Congress out there saying, hey, the city of Houston, Harris County system works. We need to fund it. We need to fund this program instead of building tent cities, right? And they need to know. They'll listen to you, believe me. I've been a chief of staff for a congressman. We do listen, even though you might not believe that we do sometimes. We really do. But, we need your help advocating the work that we're doing to our members of Congress as well.
And again, as you talk to people, talk about the fiscal, F-I-S-C-A-L issue. It costs about $23,000, $24,000 now to house somebody in a real apartment with a lock and a key, lease in their name, professionals, wraparound services, case management services, and subsidy for the rent. What does it cost to put them in jail, Mike? Mike knows the number.
120?
Huh?
About 120,000?
That's amazing. That's big numbers to have somebody in jail for a year. It's 23,000. We don't know the answer, Dr. Buck. We've always wanted it. What's it cost to leave somebody on the street and have them go to the emergency room time and time and time again? And that's in dollars. Forget what is happening to emergency room docs who are leaving that profession at the highest rate of any doctors because they feel like they can't get anything done. Money in the wrong pockets, absolutely. But that's what you do. If they put everybody in a big camp, they're gonna lock it up during the day. They're gonna be downtown too. We gotta have our system works, but we've got to get it working right now. We can't lose any time.
And I just want to add sort of the practicality. So you have a tent place. That doesn't stop people from being in the world. It just makes you think that you did something to deal with your discomfort. It didn't solve the issue. It didn't support the person needing it. And quite honestly, during COVID, so I used to work at Current Recovery, and the old Search building was across the street. During COVID, it basically became a hotel. And here's the thing, there were a lot of very vulnerable people in there, which is why we never called the police. And I did have to go put out a fire once, just once. Because we were like, why? Why are we gonna do this? But we had what we knew, what we called the mayor. And the mayor rode a bike. And the mayor went out and basically kept trying to get those individuals involved in selling drugs, in petty theft, doing whatever, because he knew how vulnerable they were. And we knew him, you know, and he would come around and he would see new people and he would engage with them and we could see them having the conversations. And so sometimes what you think you see and you know is vulnerable people being taken advantage of by people who know how to do that, and those are called criminals. And they're not and should not be allowed to prey on other people. And when you put everybody together, well, look at me as a criminal. I just now have 50 people that I can go try to figure out how to do what I need done. And so we just did somebody a favor that I'm unwilling to do. The second piece is that we don't need it. We're not in the same situation as everybody else. We have housing, we have a system, we just need the dollars. So it's remarkable to see something go so far back in the work, as though this is the place to start, when we already know where to start from. So I don't want to put law enforcement or some piece of land that the county has to argue about for the next year about can use, can't use, whatnot. Get all this stuff done. What I want is all of us as service providers and a part of the system to work our butts off to not create the opportunity for somebody to say, oh, well, you need encampments. And that's really us. We get to decide that. And so that's a big push that we need to be putting out in the community about, we don't need that. I need money to help somebody stay here. I don't need money that's gonna go light a tent encampment that basically does nothing for that person in the long run. Where is your dollars going? You would not pay for something temporary if you knew you could pay for it to be permanent. You just wouldn't. And so that's the choices that we have to make.
So let me add just a few extra points to that. On I think what the mayor is, the mayor, you know, he's very worried about the public. He's about public safety for everybody. And I think, as I said earlier, the reality is that when people are sleeping outside in all the different places that we see them, they're very exposed. They're very vulnerable. They're vulnerable to predators. Now, that's animal predators and also human predators. Just as Kelly just described, we have people that are coming into downtown and other places. They're not homeless. You may think that they are because they're hanging out on the streets and behaving like maybe somebody truly is homeless and signing up with them, but they're taking advantage of them. And they're just living that life because that's the way they want to live. So there are two different groups out there. There are people who have a home, but they just come into downtown and other places and just hang out. They know where the services are. They know where to get the different meals. And then, of course, if they're going to engage in criminal activity, they're going to do it masked within that population. And so that's very unfortunate. Along the way, taking advantage of other people. So we have to, you know, what you see is not always what you think you are seeing, just so you know. Number two, I am a glass half full guy. And so what I'm hearing, like I said earlier, is that there are a lot of people at different levels of government, just elected or already in, that are talking about this. We just have to give them the plan. We have to give them the path that has real success. Because I think they're all just saying, well, what's successful, and we'll invest in that. So we have to give them that successful plan. And then the good news is they care. They want to make a difference. Everybody wants to make a difference, from the mayor all the way to the top of the country. They all want to make a difference. They all want to be successful. So give them that plan, which we will, and show them how it works, and then we get there. So again, I just want to say that, as I was saying earlier, the idea of sleeping abroad is a problem for us because people are exposed. So, you know, I think the mayor was talking really about a safe place to sleep. The good news is, like Kelly said, right now we don't need anything like that. Right now we have a plan, we have housing, we have places that they can go. So Houston and Harris County are in a much better situation than other parts of the country, like she said. And so that's what we're going with right now. And then hopefully that's enough to solve the problem. We do change based on conditions on the ground. It's one of the things I do, all right? But we're hoping that we're successful with this, and this gets us all the way to the finish line.
All right, I think I have time for a couple more questions. How am I doing on time? I can do 2 more questions? I got 2 minutes? Okay. I'm gonna get 2 questions in. I'm gonna try my darndest. Yeah, I was going to mention that, so I'm really glad that we can do that, because I was about to say it. So these are all really, really good questions, and I don't want to pass them up. What we will do is we will sit and take the time to answer each of them as best we can and send that out to everybody who signed up for today so that you get your response. You're also more than welcome just to reach out to us if you have more questions. Always happy to talk to anybody. I think almost everybody has my cell number, which is probably a problem, but we'll go with that for now. I do want to mention this one because I think it's important. There have been media reports that Houston's homeless count is actually 12,000. I always quote the CFTH point in time count. Why the difference? I want to put the pit issue at rest. First of all, we do a much more extensive, in-depth pit count than most of the nation. Most of the nation goes out and they see somebody and they go, oh, you look homeless, and you look homeless, and you look homeless, so I'm going to mark you down as homeless. We don't do that. We make sure that we're actually interviewing people and talking to them and figuring out an intervention for them and ensuring that piece of information. But I want to be clear, a point in time count is just that, a point in time. It's not the whole picture. It's to help us have a data point set that is valid and has fidelity every single year so that you can base intervention and your approaches on that. If you don't do that over time and you're just kind of all over the place, there's no way to really test whether what you're doing is accurate or not. So I will wrestle anybody to the ground who tries to fight us on our pit count because you're missing the point of what it's for and why we use it. We certainly can go out and find more and more individuals who are homeless that we didn't see on that day. That doesn't help what we're trying to do with that particular number. And so in understanding those differences, I think it's really helpful because we're not ignoring the perception data that we see, where you might see more homeless individuals or what you think are people experiencing homelessness, and they may not be, or they may. I mean, we've done some outreach which was interesting and ended up with 12 people who've never been in our system. Well, we just didn't meet them that night, but I'm not gonna change the number of the night I did because that will mess up the fidelity of the work. So understand the importance of the tools and why they're used versus questioning the point of the tool and asking it to be used for something different. Boy, I got kind of professory about that, didn't I? It bothers me.
I'd like to see the wrestling match.
I can do it. I was a good wrestler. And then the last one that I do think I want to mention is, do I have time? I am. Well, I want to be respectful of a piece of time, but then I never am. We, Houston, have a sobering center, and anyone impaired can walk in and out and get help in 24/7. That is a statement, sorry, that is not a question, but I wanted to read it out loud because I think it's important. People don't know of that very important tool, and it's actually one that we're incorporating more and more into our work, because we also know a lot of the people that are there in the daytime it's harm reduction. I'm using in public, and we would like to build a multidisciplinary team in outreach that goes out and addresses some of that again. And the Sober Center always had incredible outreach workers who know that population and can, at that moment when change is imminent, people are ready to maybe go in and look at treatment differently. You want somebody right there who knows where they need to go and help them get there. I did substance use for many, many years, and part of the work I know is that the moment somebody decides they want to try it, you have got to get them there. Because in 2 hours, in 15 minutes, in 4 weeks, God only knows when, but they're gonna change their mind and they're gonna walk away from that intervention. And it's very hard to get them back around again because they're on the next, I can make it through this again. It's that moment, in that moment where you go, I can't do this anymore. And somebody can be there for me. So yes, Sobering Center is a big piece of what we're doing. And then, And how do we do that same for homelessness? So that's a little bit of the plan that will be rolled out in the next couple weeks, is how to have more front doors, a little easier access points, ways that people kind of know where to go, because that has been a much more difficult piece of our system. We're also a city of 660 square miles and a county that's the size of Delaware. So in that, we have to sort of think that through. One of the things that I think is important on the county side is their interventions have to be a little different than the city. And so we always want to make sure in partnering all these up, it's why Larry being able to bring everybody to the table, Mike and Mike being able to work together and work together for a long time, and then my job of convening anybody else and everybody else who needs to be there, has a much more effective way of managing that issue. So look forward to that. There will be more planning about that, and our partners will be very involved. Lots of work groups coming up, looking at a continuous quality improvement initiative so that we're really building out high-level programming. Some discussions about this stacking of services and how we're going to do it. And it's just going to be really, really interesting and complex work, and we're excited to get started. So I think I did it. I did it. All right. Thank you all so much for coming. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful.